So there's a plan, a divine plan for your life. We came in with a divine plan. Before we were born, there was actually a plan established. And it was not necessarily something that was rigid. We're all different. Some of us had plans that, and they're not plans necessarily for things that are in the outer. It's a plan for spiritual growth. But each one of us has a plan that we came in with. And Rosalie, when she was very little, told us about, she could remember, I know some of you are going to think it's strange, but could remember meeting before she was born and coming up with this plan. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, it's some pretty deep stuff, and there was a plan that came forth. And in our lives now, the question is, are we in alignment with that divine plan? Are we moving with the divine plan for us? There's something that's coming forth in our lives, and and sometimes circumstances will awaken us. We'll get to a certain place in our lives, and we'll be awakened to our divine plan. Have you ever experienced that? Have you were going through your life, and you're minding your own business, and then something happened, and then you found yourself a door opened, and you had a choice to go through that door and fulfill that next part of your journey. Anybody raise your hand if you had that happen? So it's something you understand. There's a woman named Mary Wessel who founded every Unity Church in Montana. And the way she did it was that she went to a retreat when she was probably in her 30s. And Charles Fillmore was still alive. And she was in the Peace Chapel. And in her experience of meditation, she actually got the strongest guidance that where she came from, Montana, there wasn't a single Unity Church, but there was supposed to be an opening. Unity Centers were supposed to be founded in Montana. She saw it. It was like right in front of her in an inner vision. And so she made an appointment to see Charles Fillmore, and she said, Mr. Fillmore, I received this vision in the Peace Chapel. You're supposed to found all these churches and centers in Montana. And he says, well, to whom did the vision come? She said, well, to me. He says, well, I'm going to empower you to do it. Now this is, he just barely knew her, but he knew that she was on fire with this vision. And she went back and she started 5 Unity churches in Montana, that all of which are still going today. Now, a lot of us, sometimes when I talk like this, I'm concerned that people are going to think, oh, he's trying to get me to do something big in the outer world. No, it's not about that. It's about being plugged into your inner spiritual purpose, getting in alignment with it, and then imbuing your spiritual purpose into everything that you're doing in your outer life. And that may mean taking some kind of action in your life. But many people here are retired. Many of you are retired. Your spiritual service may be ushering on Sunday mornings. It may be holding the light in a world that sometimes needs more light. You know, the circumstances we face in our world today are calling us to generate more light, are they not? And as we generate more light as individuals, we grow spiritually, do we not? So fulfilling our spiritual purpose happens when we engage with that heart within us and let that heart light shine forth. And then, I'm not saying that we don't take action. In fact, we take action. And I want to share some things this morning. As I shared a moment ago, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was in outer space in a space shuttle, and the mafia came after me and told me to change my talk. I swear. It was to get my attention, okay? But no matter how strange you may think that is, some images came to me about certain understandings of how do you get in touch with your plan? How do you get in touch with how your life plan, your spiritual plan that you came in with, might show up in your life here and now? And so there are some basic operating principles, but the one thing I want to caution and encourage is that you don't take this as some grandiose thing, but instead it's to take that life plan and to put it to work right where you are, and then the doors will open. And so I want to share, well, first of all, there's the 3 balloons. You know, I always come up with the balloons, but they have different things on them. And this morning, it's what do you want? What do you want is the first understanding. And what do you want is spiritual desire. The second one is what's in the way, and that's clearing away everything that's unlike that desire. And then the third one is what are you going to do about it, which is the process of movement and growth that occurs after you set your desire, and then you're clearing the things in the way, and then you work with it, and something different shows up. In philosophy class, they called it thesis, antithesis, synthesis. I thought I made it up, and then I found out I didn't. It's been going on since 550 BC in Heraclitus in Greece, but it has to do with what do you want. The first thing you've got to do is get clear on what you want. And I'm not talking about a new boat or a new car, although it works with those things. I'm talking about fulfilling your life's purpose, and I often share about the time that Jane Hart, my meditation teacher, asked me, what do you want? And I said, I want to serve God. She said, don't you think you ought to get to know God first? And I'd been a minister for 17 years, and I knew her well enough not to be offended, but I felt challenged. In the Katha Upanishad, in Hinduism, there's a wonderful quote, you are what your deep driving desire is. As your deep driving desire is, so is your word. As is your word, so is your deed. As is your deed, so is your destiny. You've got to start with a desire, and then it rolls out through your word and your deed, and it ends up being your destiny. So what is that central purpose of your life, that desire of your heart? And when you get in touch with what that is, then you're on the beginning of a path. That's the first step, the first force. The what is it that you want? That desire of your heart moves forth and resounds in the universe. And then what does it do? It brings up all the stuff that's unlike it. What are those things? The resistance that you feel within, that you might see outside of yourself in your environment, but that's all just a reflection of your inner resistance. And don't feel bad. That's the time when you don't put yourself down or judge yourself. It's a natural and necessary step. So anything that comes up that needs to be cleared, as I've often shared, love brings up what's in its way. The desire of your heart brings up that which needs to be cleared. That's that second force, what's in the way. And the third one is in the process that you work with it. What are you going to do about it? And that's that synthesis that moves forward in your life. And sometimes we have crises in our lives, or we have difficulties in our lives, or we have times that come up that force us to take a look at what our purpose really is, and we often have to redefine our purpose. One of the things she says in this book, Dare to Prosper, in the 3rd chapter that we're talking about here, is that she challenges you to dare to be flexible. I love it. Dare to be flexible. Put forth your intention, and as things come up, and then be flexible. I remember I experienced this when I was in the Youth of Unity. When I was 14 years old, I learned about creating a plan of action for your life, a spiritual focus for your life. And so I looked at my Youth of Unity time, and I decided I would create a plan. And the first step was, I was 14, I was going to be the chaplain in charge of the meditations of my local chapter. And then when I was 15, I was going to be in charge of the region, the chaplain for the region. And then when I was 16, I was going to be the chaplain in charge of the International Youth of Unity. And then when I was 17, I was going to be the president or regional rep of the region. And then when I was 18, I was going to be president of the Youth of Unity. And I set that plan, and it went like clockwork, 14, 15, 16, 17. And before the last conference, which was when I was 18, I got this, and I was meditating every day at that point. I got the strongest guidance. Don't run for international president. You got other fish to fry. You got other things to do. I wasn't going to listen to that. No way. So I just went ahead blindly and pushed my way through it anyway, and I really had a rough experience for 18 years old. But you know, if I'd been elected, I would have been almost 20 by the time I left the Youth of Unity, which is a high school group. So what would that have been like? I would have been a junior in college because I graduated early. So it was for a purpose. It was for a purpose because I didn't get elected. And it opened me up. First of all, I learned follow your guidance because it would have been a lot nicer. But the second thing was I opened up to, I used to hitchhike back and forth from my college because the buses didn't run very well and I hadn't got a license yet. And during one week, 3 different people picked me up hitchhiking and told me about a meditation teacher who just operated out of her home. 3 people in 1 week. What's the odds of that? And so I ended up there, and I studied in that group for 4.5 years and learned so many things. And then the group kind of went out there a little bit. It served its purpose. I learned many things, and I've shared many times about how I was supposed to go into ministerial school. Now I started, when I was 4 years old, my mom said I wanted to be a minister. I told her that, and I didn't believe her, and then she insisted, no, you really did say that. I remembered being 10, but I'd let that go because I was in kind of la-la land, and kind of, I dropped out of college, and I was just doing whatever. But then I realized sometimes it's through adversity and difficulty in your life that you go and you finally engage with what your next spiritual step is. Now when I share what is your next spiritual step, I'm not saying it's necessarily drop everything you're doing and move to Cleveland, or God help you, or whatever, you know, it's not necessarily something in your outer world. Sometimes it is, but it's usually engaging with that desire in your heart. And let me share something up here that if you want to know what your next spiritual step may be, whether it's employment or just something you're supposed to do, recognize there are 3 realms of expression that need to get into alignment. And this came to me this morning in my wild and crazy dream. And the first one is what you're good at. So it's your talent. It's what you're good at. It's something that you have an ability to do. By the way, this method, this model, is found in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's been used all over in all the major corporations in America. Only I'm changing the language a little to bring it down to the level of the individual. So what are you good at? The second one is what you like, what gives you joy. And we might call it, in the words of Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. So it's that which gives you joy. So this is what you're good at, that's what gives you joy. But there's a third one, and that is the needs of the world, of the needs of others. And we might call this service. So at the intersection, in this Venn diagram, of talent, bliss, and service, you find your purpose. And so where is, in your life, what opens your heart? What gives you that bliss, that joy? Where do you have abilities? And you can engage those abilities. And where are there needs of people around you? And this could be the most simple thing, like, I don't know, many people in this room are volunteering with people in convalescent hospitals and residence homes. I don't know what it is for you, and you may be already doing this. You may have already listened to this call, and you're just needing to empower it and be reminded of this intersection of these 3 things. But there's a plan for you. You're a part of that plan. It's unfolding for you. You're part of a greater whole. You know, my daughter, I spoke of a moment ago, went away to college. And you remember how when you first moved out of your parents' house and how scary that was? There's a certain point where you go, oh my gosh, it's all on me. I remember when I was in college, I was in my 3rd year of college, and I was selling my brushes door to door, and I realized, my gosh, if I don't sell brushes, well, it's all on me. What's going to happen? So I realized, and she shared some of her concerns, and so she asked me, and we worked together to help her come up with a plan in her life for how she's going to do it. And we did meditation, we did prayer, and we wrote down a plan that she was going to follow. And some of those things have already shifted and changed somewhat. But you know, in every aspect of life, in every realm of life, there is a plan. You have to work with a plan, not rigidly. As Catherine Ponder says, dare to be flexible. And also don't get caught up in the short term. Don't let your short-term demonstration stand in the way of your long-term miracle. There's corporations out there that we're familiar with that operated from a plan. Jeff Bezos in Amazon.com. I remember reading articles after he'd been in business for a few years, just scathingly saying he's never going to make it. It's all built on a house of cards. It's all debt. But he had a long-term plan and he stayed with it, and now he's profitable. And then I read about the founder of Federal Express, a guy named Fred Smith. In 1965, he was in Yale Business School, and one of his teachers told them all to come up with a hypothetical business plan. And he thought to himself, if it costs $150 for a 150-pound person to fly cross country, and in those days $15,000 for 150 pounds of packages to fly cross country, what if I got a fleet of jets and flew packages around the country? well, I would have a business model. So he presented it and got a C and dropped out and formed Federal Express. There are other people. There's Bill Gates, and that hits close to home because I was a minister of a church in Albuquerque, New Mexico that was founded in a motel, in the banquet hall of a motel, where at the same time in one of the rooms there was a guy named Bill Gates, and right next to him was a guy named Paul Allen, and they were founding Microsoft. And one of their earliest employees who cashed out wanted to work with children for the rest of her life, and she obviously didn't have to work. She was doing it in service. And Lynn trained her to become the youth education director. And so she and she was involved in her church, and we heard all about this. But there was a plan, and they were in Harvard Business School, and they realized because of the invention of the personal computer they had to move right then, so they dropped out and did it. And I'm not saying you need to take drastic measures. There's times to do that. There are other times, for most of us, it's getting in touch with that fulfillment of your spiritual purpose. I got another diagram for you. This is what came, and if you don't like it, just blame the mafia that came to me in outer space in my dream. This is the time you're supposed to laugh. And this is what came to me before I came here. It was, if you're looking for what your next spiritual step is, and these two models work together, but they're a little different. So I'm just going to throw them out there and maybe it'll work for you. One of them is, what is your spiritual growth? That's the vertical. And I talked about this recent talks. And then the horizontal is what? It's your spiritual service. And where your spiritual growth meets your spiritual service, that's where you put your heart, that's where you put your energy. And so, in your meditations, in your times of prayer, get receptive, get quiet, and then open yourself up to the possibility to, where is my growth intersecting with my service, and how can I be of greater service? And it may be something that is you're already doing, that you put your energy and vibration in and align with your spiritual purpose, which you came into this life with. Or it may be something seemingly very small, very insignificant, but it is powerful, a powerful way of fulfilling your purpose. Jane Elizabeth Hart, who's my meditation teacher, shared once, and this is a bit of a challenging story, that she was growing spiritually and she was meditating and she was listening, and what came to her was that she had to make a choice. You see, she spent almost all of her spare time doing a couple of things. One was she volunteered in her Methodist church, doing a lot of different things like for the children and things like that. And she also was a dressmaker, and she made dresses for her 5 daughters, and 4 daughters, and for her friends. And what came to her was, if she wanted to, she could take that dress designer talent and take it to New York City and become famous. And she was that talented, she could do that. And then as far as her work in her church, what came to her was, you're putting, and this is challenging, you're putting little band-aids on great gashes. If you do your spiritual work, you will be given greater tools to help people. And so she made her choice, because what came to her was she couldn't do all of these things. If the other choice that was available to her was her spiritual growth and her becoming a spiritual teacher and becoming the spiritually realized person. So what she did was, she left her Methodist church, went to Unity Church, started learning some things, but also started doing her inner work. And she put away all of her dressmaking. She took that time and put it into spiritual growth. And she grew, and she was led to go to Unity and start her Center for Enlightenment. And there, at Unity Village, when she was working as an executive, she saw the vision, the 8-sided figure with the word Center for Enlightenment. She didn't know what it meant, but she was guided to retire, quit her job, and then she was funded for the rest of her life through somebody that she had just met, happenstance, to be able to have an online ministry called Center for Enlightenment. But that wasn't even in her awareness. When I'm sharing this is a pretty challenging concept, but it's sometimes in your life you have to choose. And in that model that I was sharing a moment ago, Jim Collins, in the book Good to Great, he talked about, in all the most successful corporations, they have something called the stop doing list. You know what a stop doing list is? When they get in touch with that intersection between what they were really good at, what was their passion, what was really that bliss in their heart, and what really served people in that intersection of those three circles, that anything that was unlike those three things they had to let go of. And so in your life, sometimes you have to let go and divest yourself of the things that are not serving that spiritual purpose in your life, that inner purpose. And this is challenging, but sometimes we get to the point in our lives we've grown, and I challenge you to look in your life. Where can you let something go in order to gain something greater? Where can you have a stop doing list and then embrace something that is even greater? And I've heard people say, well, I can do it all. Well, not necessarily so. There's only so many hours in the day. You can fulfill many aspects of your life, but sometimes we pursue things that are not fruitful for us. So again, look into your life and ask yourself, where can I engage with my spiritual growth? Where can I serve other people? And where can I fulfill that desire in my heart? Well, I'm going to ask you to join with me in meditation. And in this meditation, we're going to go back into the garden of the heart, which is, I'm going to say this, it's a real place. It's real in your imagination, which is to say, it's in the ideal realm of God's substance. So in a sense, it's more real than anything physically. So take a deep breath and imagine yourself in that beautiful natural scene where you're surrounded by beauty, physical beauty, even beyond anything you have seen in a physical garden. And you can hear the sounds of nature. The birds and the wind, and perhaps even the insects. And you can smell the scent in the air, the leaves and the blossoms. You can feel the breeze upon your face and hands as you sit in this place. And as you've been listening to the talk, there is a desire in your heart that has come up. So ask yourself, as best I understand it, what is the desire in my heart that I would have fulfilled in alignment with my spiritual purpose? And offer that in the sanctuary, this garden of your heart, in a moment of silent release. Offer your dream. And now we just release it, we let it go, we loose it, we fully and freely just let it go. And in the spirit of release, we're filled with joy, energized and empowered. We go forth to meet our good. And whatever has been downloaded into our consciousness, into our beingness, comes forth as we go forth into our day and our week. And we're grateful that we act upon this. So be it, so it is. Amen. And now we just move more deeply into this presence. We take a nice deep breath, let it out. And there's a sanctuary in our hearts. Some call it paradise. Paradise is the Persian word for an enclosed garden of the heart. And mystics throughout the ages have talked about this garden in the heart, this paradise. And many of us have been in meditations where we've created a sanctuary there. So join with me in entering the garden of your heart. For me, it is enclosed by a beautiful stucco wall that has a door in it, and it says, Garden of my heart above the door. And I open this wooden door and I go into a beautiful natural space where it is even more beautiful than the physical gardens I've seen. I can hear the sounds of nature, the birds and the wind. I can feel the breeze upon my skin. I can smell the scents of blossoms and the leaves. And I see the beauty all around me. And there's a perfect place for me to sit and rest in the garden of my heart, which I approach and I sit and I look up and around, enjoying again the scent in the air and the breeze on my skin, the nature sounds. The beauty all around. It's so safe here and so precious. And in this space, when I speak the word, when I speak this prayer treatment that I'm holding in my hands, there's a resonance as I speak the word, for in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. The Word was with God. And this speaking the word brings forth a great and resounding response. And so taking your prayer treatment, join with me beginning with I dwell together. I dwell in the midst of infinite abundance. The abundance of God is my infinite source. The river of life never stops flowing. It flows through me into lavish expression. Good comes to me through unexpected avenues. God works in myriad ways to bless me. I now open my mind to receive my good. Nothing is too good to be true. Nothing is too wonderful to happen. With God as my source, nothing amazes me. I give freely and fearlessly into life, and life gives back to me with fabulous increase. Blessings come in expected and unexpected ways. God provides for me in wondrous ways. I am grateful, and so it is. Take a deep breath and feel the resonance of the word spoken from your heart, in your heart space, in your sanctuary of your heart. And then just quietly listen and feel the energy that has been released. I am the presence of pure being. I am that expression of God that seeks to fulfill my life's purpose. And I open my heart and I find that perfect space in my heart where my desire to grow meets my desire to serve others. That perfect intersection between that spiritual step I am to take and what the needs are of those around me. And so I'm grateful that I'm fulfilling my life's purpose. Let it be revealed through me and to me and in me and as me. And so it is. And so it is. Oh, I hear the kids out there. So let's take our offering. And our offering is I give from my spiritual purpose and I receive abundantly. Together? I give from my spiritual purpose and I receive abundantly. And silently. And again aloud together. I give from my spiritual purpose and I receive abundantly. And so it is. Amen.